On today's episode, which members of the Chicago Blackhawks could we see take part in the 2026 Winter Olympics?
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Per usual, just a reminder to hit that like button, comment down below, and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. All of that is 100% free, won't cost you anything, and really does help me out tremendously, especially subscribing to the channel. I'm currently on the climb to 2,000 subscribers. I would really like to accomplish that feat before the season gets going later on in the fall. If you're tuning in through an audio platform such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever it may be, please make sure to rate and review the show, preferably with a 5-star rating if you like what you're hearing on a daily basis. And last but certainly not least, got to let you all know today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Go and download the Game Time app right now, and when you do, create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $20 off the sporting events, concerts, or theater events near you. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Per usual, we got yet another fun and creative topic of conversation to kick things off on the show here today, as is kind of the routine usually when I'm talking about hockey in August. But with the 2024 Paris Summer Olympics going down at the moment, which are always so much fun to watch, and of course, with NHLers notably making a return to the Winter Olympics in 2026, I figured it would be fun to talk about which members of the Blackhawks we could potentially see represent their native countries in Italy a few years from now. And the reason that I actually wanted to make this the primary talking point of today's episode is because a couple of weeks ago, Bleacher Report's NHL staff released projected rosters for the top 6 countries in the 2026 Olympics: the United States, Canada, Sweden, Finland, Czechia, and potentially Russia, should their ban get lifted before then. So I thought it'd be fun to go through who Bleacher Nation projected to be on their rosters, talk about where we could see Blackhawks potentially squeeze in. Obviously, a lot can change in 2 years' time, but a fun little conversation here to kick things off on today's show. Starting off with the red, white, and blue, Team USA. And as far as Bleacher, how many Blackhawks wound up on Bleacher Nation's projected roster for the United States? That would be 0. And honestly, I kind of have a hard time seeing that as the case, although I will admit it is difficult to see any Blackhawks forwards creeping into the top 12 or the top 14, however many they keep for the United States in 2026, because it is a really deep group, and it's a group that has been established NHLers, all-stars in the NHL for years and years and years. And I think it's telling that the projected fourth line at this point in time is Brady Tkachuk, JT Miller, and Johnny Gaudreau. So you kind of got to be a stud to make this forward group for the United States. I don't really see any Blackhawks that they have right now. Of course, that could change in 2 years' time via trade or free agency or whatever it may be. But as of right now, yeah, I don't see any Blackhawks forwards getting into that group. But on the back end, this is where I do think we could see some Hawks represent Team USA. Seth Jones, I was kind of surprised that he wasn't a part of this list. I will say the top 4 for the United States, it seems a little bit clear-cut. Quinn Hughes, Charlie McAvoy, Adam Fox, those guys are all going to have big roles. Zach Werenski's represented the United States time and time again as well. But the third pairing was Jacob Slavin and John Carlson, both who are going to be on the wrong side of 30 when this tournament is going to be played. Seth Jones will as well, but he has represented the United States time and time again throughout his career, and he's even worn the C. He has been Captain America in the past at the World Championship. So I think it's pretty likely that Seth finds his way onto this team. And I do wonder if Alex Vlasic continues to develop like we saw from him this past year, especially if he is Seth Jones's D partner. I do wonder if the United States will want to keep those two together potentially on the back end, but Seth undoubtedly has the better chance of the two to make this team, but I wouldn't rule out Alex Vlasic either. I do think it's unlikely we get 0 Blackhawks as part of the United States roster, though, in 2026. Next, we have Canada. The one Blackhawk here that won't surprise anyone is Mr. Connor Bedard. He is going to be on the forefront of Team Canada's team in 2026. Currently listed as the projected third line center behind Connor McDavid and Nathan MacKinnon, which does make sense. However, you do wonder 2 years from now, the hope is that Connor Bedard is going to be a superstar at that point in time. You got to think Canada would at least consider bumping him up on the wing alongside with McDavid or McKinnon. I mean, that could just be absolutely lethal. That power play for Team Canada is going to be nuts. They have talent all over the place. Hyman, Marner, Brad Marchand, Sidney Crosby, they're all projected to be in the top 6 as well. And then the blue line, really solid for Canada. Cale Makar, Dougie Hamilton, Devon Taves, Evan Bouchard, Noah Dobson, Morgan Riley. Yeah, it's going to be a really good forward in D combo for the Canadians. However, the question mark for them is going to be who's going to get the nod in goal. As far as Blackhawks projected to be on Team Sweden's roster, we don't have any here. Their top 6 does look pretty solid, though, I will say. Philip Forsberg, Elias Pettersson, William Nylander projected as the first line with Lucas Raymond, Mika Zibanejad, and Adrian Kempe projected as the second line. And I think there could be a case for Sweden to have the best defense and goalie combo in this tournament potentially. Victor Hedman and Erik Karlsson, yeah, they'll be a little bit older, but they'll still have Rasmus Dahlin, who's going to continue to develop, Gustav Forsling, who's really grown into his own, along with Matthias Ekholm, Hampus Lindholm, Jonas Brodin. Like, they have a lot of Rasmus Anderson as well. They got a lot of good options on D, plus Linus Ullmark or Philip Gustafsson potentially in net. Keep an eye on Sweden in this tournament. For Finland, Teuvo Teravainen is expected to represent them in 2026 in Italy, listed as their second line right winger right now, along with former Canes teammate Sebastian Aho and Arturi Lehkonen, while Patrick Laine, Alexander Barkov, and Mikko Rantanen are slated as the top line. Decent defense for the Finns, Miro Heiskanen, Asa Lindell, Blackhawks legends Henri Jokiharju and Olli Mata, Juuso Välimäki on defense as well, and then Jussi Saros, and that could be the real wild card for the Finns. For Czechia, Peter Mrazek is listed as the backup right now behind Karel Vejmelka, with Andre Palat, Tomáš Hertl, and David Pastrnak as the top line. Some decent scoring offense for Czechia, but the defense looks like it's going to be weak. David Jiricek is listed as their top liner right now, and we know he's just emerging onto the NHL scene, along with Filip Hronek, Jan Ruta, and Radko Gudas, both aging at that point in time, listed as the second pairing. So it's going to be tough for Czechia. And then Russia, should they get their ban removed, it's going to be interesting to see what their roster looks like. It is an old man's lineup for sure. Alex Ovechkin, Evgeny Malkin, and Nikita Kucherov are listed as the top line. And then other than that, the forward group really does fall off, but there is potential with them in net and with this defense. Mikhail Sergachev, Ivan Provorov, Pavel Mintyukov, Alexander Nikishin, Dmitry Orlov, Vladislav Gavrikov, and then you have Shesterkin or Andrei Vasilevsky in net. Like, if Russia gets their ban lifted, that defense and goalie combo could will them through the tournament with all the experience they have in the forward group as well. But with that aging forward group, should Russia find their way into this tournament, could Roman Kanserov be someone who finds his way in there as a bottom line type of guy? I mean, he's going to be playing in the KHL. He's going to be getting good opportunities over in Russia there. I don't know. It's definitely a long shot, but with just such an aging forward group, got to wonder if Roman Kanserov could potentially sneak his way in. And then Switzerland and Germany are both going to be taking part in the Olympics as well. Figure to see Philip Kurashev as one of the staples for the Swiss, and Lucas Reichel, same thing for Germany as well. We've seen both those guys represent their countries at the World Juniors, the World Championships in the past, and not as deep of rosters as the other 6 teams that I just referenced. So I would expect to see both of those guys taking part in the Olympics for their respected countries. And then there is Italy and 3 more countries that still have to qualify that have not yet been named for the 2026 Olympics. So we don't know what the case is going to be there, but I thought it was cool to kind of look ahead 2 years, see what Bleacher Report is thinking these rosters could look like. I don't know if we're going to see a ton of Blackhawks in this tournament, but we're going to see a couple. Connor Bedard is obviously going to be a huge talking point for the Canadians. It'll be cool seeing Teuvo Teravainen for the Finns. Hopefully Seth Jones and maybe even Alex Vlasic could wind up sneaking their way onto Team USA's roster. Khrushchev and Reichel will probably be playing big parts for those two underdog countries. Should be a lot of fun. I'm so stoked that NHLers are going back to the Olympics. It takes me back to when I was a kid. 2010, oh my gosh, that gold medal game between Canada and the United States. I'll still never forget where I was when Zach Parise tied up that game to force overtime off a beautiful play by my boy Patrick Kane, might I add. Just a huge play by Kaner there to set up that goal. Sidney Crosby goes on to score the golden goal in overtime. Like, that was epic, man. I love those are memories that are ingrained in my head. We need more of those in hockey. And just even looking at how deep some of these other countries are going to be, it should be a very enticing tournament. I'm super excited about it. So there is my little fun chat surrounding which members of the Blackhawks we could see taking part in the 2026 Winter Olympics, which can't come soon enough. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, I'll talk about Oliver Moore and AJ Spellacy taking part in Team USA's World Junior Summer Showcase. But first, I need to talk to you all real quick about Indeed. We're all driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, but match with Indeed. And if you need to hire, you need Indeed, because Indeed is the best matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates in an instant. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. And one of the things that I personally love about Indeed is that it makes hiring all in one place so easy, because you can skip out on the countless job sites that ask a ton of unnecessary information and don't wind up leading you anywhere. Go and join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide by using Indeed to hire great talent in an instant. And listeners of this show, you'll get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility if you go and visit Indeed.com/lockedon. Go and check it out right now. Again, that's Indeed.com/lockedon to get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility. Need to hire? Then you need Indeed. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Real quick, just a reminder, do me a favor, please go and hit that like button, comment down below, and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. It really does mean the world to me and makes all my hard work worth it. And also, make sure to go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On. Plus, our national shows covering every single league. So make sure to go and check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and to subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, segment 2, Team USA's World Junior Summer Showcase kicked off last week in Plymouth, Michigan, as numerous countries, if I could talk, start to piece together or at least get an idea of what they want their rosters to look like for the upcoming World Junior Championship, which will take part around Christmas time. The United States had 46 players attend its camp, including Blackhawks prospects Oliver Moore and AJ Spellacy, who was a third-round selection in the 2024 NHL draft. Spellacy, some of you may have seen based on my retweet, or maybe even from the content that was shared by Stephen Ellis and Chris Peters, I want to say. AJ Spellacy actually got kicked out of a game in the World Junior Summer Showcase, which I will say I love to see that, even in an environment like that. It's competitive. I don't want to phrase it that way. I guess I'd put it, I love to see that when there is an opportunity for a youngster like AJ Spellacy, who's part of the 2024 draft class, it's obviously going to be an uphill battle for him as not a non-first rounder to make this team for the United States. Personally, by the way, I didn't think the hit was worthy of him getting ejected, but I like to see him just playing the game that he wants to play and trying to make the most of his opportunity, using his size, using his strength, his physicality. That's what's going to give him an opportunity to make this team if he does. It's not because of the skills that he has. The United States have their skill guys. I mean, they're coming off of a gold medal at last year's World Junior. They have a lot of players returning, right? They don't need AJ Spellacy to go in there and light it up offensively. They could potentially use his size and athleticism, but as I referenced, it's going to be really hard for a guy like AJ Spellacy to make this team, but he does figure to have a shot the following year as part of that'll technically be the 2026 World Junior Championship because they always have it 1 year ahead. Well, technically it gets... Never mind. I'm not even going to go on that ramble. But in 2 years' time, AJ Spellacy, 1 year after, 1 year removed from being drafted, I think will give him a much better chance as one of the older skatesmen to crack Team USA's roster. It's a long shot for him to make this team out of camp, but I did like to hear that Chris Peters referenced he thought AJ Spellacy had himself a pretty strong camp and just being unique and being different from a lot of guys who provide that skill game who are there at the showcase. He said his skating and his athleticism were on full display the entire camp. He also scored a goal in the final game of the World Junior Summer Showcase against Canada. Could bring some size and skill to the table is what Chris Peters said, but it seems like it's going to be a little bit of a big ask for him to crack this team. But still, regardless, very good experience, really good display to get him kind of noticed and on the minds of Team USA's coaching staff, where he'll have another opportunity and a better opportunity to make this team for good in 2026. For Oliver Moore, though, he had himself a standout World Junior Summer Showcase. The speed was on display all tournament long, if you want to call it a tournament, and he figures to be a part of the top six in some capacity for the red, white, and blue at this upcoming year's tournament. It will be interesting to see, though, if Will Smith will be able to play in this tournament if the San Jose Sharks are going to give him permission after he just signed his entry-level contract with the team. And should Will Smith come back, currently Oliver Moore's been playing as the second-line center for Team USA behind James Higgins. If you don't know who that kid is, you should learn real fast because he's very likely going number 1 overall in 2025. He figures to be the top-line center if Will Smith doesn't return to the red, white, and blue. But if Will Smith does, that could bump Higgins down to the second-line center. Maybe that moves Oliver Moore down to 3C. Maybe he moves on the wing into some type of top 6 role. But regardless of where he's at in the lineup, Oliver Moore is going to have his fingerprints all over the blueprint of Team USA's roster and their lines and everything. He's going to be playing a very big role for that team's penalty kill, probably on the second power play unit, right? Like he can just drive play on both ends. Incredible how he uses his speed to create scoring chances. He also uses his speed to be a very good defender. I'm really excited for his two-way potential at the NHL level. And I thought this was interesting to hear from Chris Peters, who wrote in an article a couple of days ago about Oliver Moore, quote, "If he can ever improve his ability to finish plays that he can create, he really could become a star at the NHL level." And when I talked about Oliver Moore recently, I mentioned in the second half of his freshman campaign, it really seemed like his hands were finally starting to keep up with his feet. It felt like for a little bit there, he was almost too fast for his own good, almost a little Andreas Athanasiou-like. His hands just can't keep up with how quick his feet are moving. But that seemed to really come together late last year in Moore's freshman campaign with Minnesota. And he's going to get a really good opportunity there and with the United States and what will likely be his final year of college hockey, I think, before he turns pro. He's got a great game for the NHL level with his pace, and I know the Blackhawks are super excited about him. I'm super excited to see how big of a piece he's going to be for the United States at the 2025 World Juniors. Just to give you all an idea, though, Chris Peters did give a projected lineup for the United States 2025 World Juniors, just so we can have a little bit of an idea as to what he's thinking. The top line right now, Gabe Perreault, James Higgins, and Ryan Leonard. This is, of course, without Will Smith in the lineup. Should Will Smith return, yeah, he's naturally going to be there with his boys, Gabe Perreault and Ryan Leonard. No shock there. The second line currently has been Quentin Musty, Oliver Moore, and Cole Iserman. Boy, that would be a fun offensive trio to keep an eye on. Trevor Connolly, Danny Nelson, and Brody Zemer are the third line projected right now, according to Chris Peters, while Brandon Svoboda, Carey, Terrence, and Noah Powell are projected as the fourth line. Terrence was part of the United States World Junior group last year, but as one of the younger guys, didn't really get a big opportunity in the tournament. On the back end, Zeev Buium figures to be a staple, a minute muncher. He was huge to help the United States win gold last year. They're going to try to win gold in the World Juniors for a second year in a row for the first time in the United States World Junior history. He's slated to play with Drew Fortescue, Cole Hudson, and EJ Emery, who emerged as a really good pairing for the United States Development Program this past year, figure to be together. And then the third D pairing is kind of where it's up for grabs. We could see Zach Fisher, Zach Schultz, Aram Madian, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. And then Trey Augustine, he's going to be the number one goalie for the red, white, and blue when this tournament gets underway around Christmas time. But World Juniors, always a fun time of year. I think Oliver Moore is going to be the only one playing for the United States at this year's tournament. It's going to be a long shot for AJ Spellacy, but always fun to watch this tournament when it takes part during Christmas time. And it's going to be a lot of fun to watch James Hagens on the scene for those who don't really know about what he's expected to bring to the table this upcoming season, leading to him as the projected number one overall pick. But there are my thoughts on Oliver Moore and AJ Spellacy's performance at the World Junior Summer Showcase. Coming up in just a moment, before I wrap things up, I do still have to get into some updates on Martin Misiak and Antti Saarela. But first, I got to talk to you all real quick about Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to the next ball game that you want to attend. And I'm here happy to announce that Game Time is now an official ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets both faster and easier. Plus, prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer that it gets to the first pitch. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And I personally have been using Game Time for probably close to a decade now. I know you all know the spiel. Back when I was in high school, going down to the United Center to watch the Blackhawks in their heyday, or those great Cubbies teams from 2014 to 2016, I always used Game Time, and I still use it to this day when I want to go down to Wrigley and catch a ball game during the summer, or when I'm traveling in another city and want to go see a comedy event with one of my friends, or want to go see a theater event. It's always the first place I check because it's the fastest, cheapest, and easiest way for you to purchase your tickets. I highly recommend you all go and download the Game Time app right now. And when you do, be sure to create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $20 off with your first purchase. Yes, you heard me right. You can get $20 off to go and take a trip down to Wrigley Field this summer. All you got to do, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Game Time. Real quick, just wanted to say thank you to everyone out there for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your day. Now be sure to go and check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. You can find the link, to Locked On NHL in the description, or simply search on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Segment 3, a couple of prospect updates that I haven't gotten to here yet on the show that have been announced in the last couple of weeks regarding where these particular players will spend the 2024-2025 campaign. First, Martin Misiak, the 2023 second-round pick, 55th overall selection for the Blackhawks. We saw him sign an ATO with the Rockford IceHogs after his first year of junior hockey with the Erie Otters of the OHL came to a close, where he tallied 23 goals and 24 assists for 47 points in 60 games worth of action. But after he signed that ATO, there were some rumblings about whether Misiak was going to make the leap to pro hockey this summer, which, by the way, for those of you who are wondering, because he is a European import and was selected in the CHL import draft, even though he's only 19 years old, that would make him eligible for the AHL. And I do want to quickly correct myself. When I was talking about Merrick Vanacker on Monday after he signed his entry-level contract, I mentioned there is the possibility that he could make the leap to pro hockey along with Nick Lardis. I forgot about this rule. So I doubt Merrick Vanacker is going to be someone the Blackhawks want to rush to the NHL next year. So more than likely, he will spend another year in the OHL since he won't be AHL eligible. Martin Misiak would have been AHL eligible this year, though, because he is a European import. Although the Blackhawks ultimately ended up electing sending him back to Erie for another year of development there, which personally I think is the right call. Misiak, boy, did he have a really strong start to the year, and not even just with Erie. Some of you may remember he was really noticeable in the preseason for the Blackhawks. There were some folks who thought like maybe Misiak cracks the NHL roster. I don't think that was ever in the cards, but he certainly was noticeable during training camp as well, and then got off to a roaring start with the Erie Otters out of the gate, wound up qualifying for World Junior roster for Czechia. Didn't go on to have the best showing there, was scratched for a couple of games, was actually scratched in the OHL playoffs for a game, I believe, as well. His production really dipped in the second half of the year. So I do think it was the right decision. And obviously with the Blackhawks being in this position where they're not in any rush whatsoever, they're really trying to emphasize on patience. I think it only makes sense to send Martin Misiak back to Erie. And we know there's going to be plenty of time for him to develop properly. And he's not really someone who, as an offensive piece, like there's a ton of high ceiling there for him. Like in terms of what I think he's going to be at the next level offensively, I don't really think that's like going to be his area of expertise. I think he's going to be a physical, hard to play against two-way forward who's got some good size and just continuing to add on to that ruggedness in junior while continuing to develop his offensive game a little bit more. I think that's the right point of action for him. I think it's a good call to send him back to Erie, where he is likely to get a top six opportunity night in and night out for the Otters. And then second, we have Antti Saarela, who some of you probably have forgotten about at this point. He's been around for a long, long time, was a fourth-round pick back in 2019, and has kind of been all over the place so far in his pro career. He spent 4.5 years playing pro hockey over in Finland's Liga before finally coming over to the United States last summer. He spent his first year in North America entirely with the Rockford IceHogs, but only got to play in 27 games worth of action and tallied 5 goals and added just 1 assist for 6 points. He's still only 23 years old. However, he is now officially going back to Finland once again. He's been loaned to Lukko in Finland's Liga for the 2024-2025 campaign. And while he was never really a guy who I had like super high hopes for, it was notable that he had really good experience. I had heard about his skating and work ethic. That combination in a bottom six role, I think, gave him a chance to be an NHLer for the Blackhawk down the road. But quite honestly, I think that book is now kind of closed at this point in time. Didn't seem like he got the greatest opportunity for the IceHogs last year. Didn't really make the most of it from afar. I wasn't watching every IceHogs game night in and night out, but he probably wasn't happy about finally coming over to North America and not getting much of a role. Probably looked like it was going to be the same again for him this year. I do wonder if there could be a mutual termination coming between these two sides because, again, it just feels like a long shot that Antti Saarela is going to play in the NHL or play in the NHL as a Chicago Blackhawk. We'll see what winds up happening there, but definitely not the most encouraging bit of news for Saarela's NHL future here in Chicago, at least, that he has officially been loaned back over to Finland in the Liga for this upcoming season. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Please be sure to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube if you haven't done so already. It really does help me out in a big way. And also go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you may listen to your podcast, even if you're someone who regularly watches on YouTube. If you want to find me on X, check out at Jack Bushman2. For my strictly Blackhawks account, find at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until the next episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your days. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.